So as you can see, we got the top portion all built and assembled. Now the panels, as you saw, I pre-finished sanded those, and then I went ahead and applied 4 coats of armor seal on them, so they're basically done for finish. I wanted that because I'm going to be trapping them inside here as a floating panel, so of course you want to make sure all the edges are fully finished into the side, so that when it shrinks later, you're not going to be revealing something. So that's just normal protocol with the floating panel like that. Now the top portion here, and actually all the show sides have had their sides sanded up to P320 now. I did use the RS2E sander, which is a quarter sheet sander, and I could put it all the way across. Now I really like doing that when I can, because when it was going across and I was able to float it across this whole surface here, I'm very much making these two sides very flat with respect to each other. If for some reason one side is a little higher than the other, you'll definitely see it in the scratch pattern at the lower grits. So then you can easily work it until you've gotten this whole thing nice and flat. And since this portion here is actually going to be the drawer front, there's going to be a drawer here and a drawer there, along with just a fake piece here. Well, we really want these to be flat. So it's a good technique if you can do it. Sometimes just the structure of it all you can't, and you have to use a smaller sander, which sometimes you'll end up with some divots and such, especially if you work one little area a little too long. So not that I've ever done that. So a couple things of note for this top portion. This section here delineates where the sink is going to be, and of course these openings here are for the drawers. That's why we've got the little dust partitions. This open area here is going to be the vertical part of the T. Now these boards here that are going across are of course for structural reasons, right? You're going to be keeping the top there, and it's going to help support the granite that's on the top. But because this marks where the sink is, the board itself had to be here or further to the outside. It couldn't be any closer or else it'd be in the way of the sink. So what I'm doing is I'm using these for a dual purpose. They're going to support this top, but also I inset them a little bit from the drawer, so you can see that here's the drawer opening, outside edge, and there's the board above it. So it's acting like a drawer kicker. Now as a drawer kicker, what will happen is when the boards go in and you're pulling out the drawer, this keeps the drawer from tipping all the way up. Now of course it would eventually bump into the granite, but you don't want this drawer tipping so far down. So that's part of the function. The other thing that we have here is this portion here that holds the panel. You can see that it is also inset from that opening. So there's the opening for the drawer, and then here's that board. This board here is also placed on the flat. Those two combine to being the runners for the drawer. So the runners are going to be, for the drawer, are going to be down here, and the same on the other side. Now it turns out that normally if you're making like a big stack of drawers, what I would do is I would actually plane one board a little thicker than all the other boards, and that would be for these runners. Just a hair thicker, about 1 millimeter thicker. And then I would put them in registering the bottom so that these things stick up. The reason why is that you want it so that when the drawers run, they would be running on the runners, but never really putting any friction on this front piece. Otherwise you're going to get these little dips. It looks terrible. So now it turns out that I just ended up using my regular stock, because what I'm going to do is later I'm going to take some of my scrap, cut a very, very thin slice off on the bandsaw, and I'll glue them in place. Those will be glued in place at the same time as we put the drawer guides. The drawer guides are going to be little pieces of wood here that are placed on either side of the drawer box in order to make it go straight. And you end up putting those in after you have the drawer in place so that you can exactly size it to the drawer. So now the focus is going to be to build the center portion here that's going to go down and form the drawers. So this is going to actually be fitted inside this opening, so that's why this needed to be built first. So any little adjustments that I had to make for making these panels, for getting these runners correctly, we can get this thing exactly sized to the opening. Now the fronts of the drawers are already set back from the front of the granite, and then with this box here being set back an additional 1.5 inches, this is going to basically form that toe kick region I was talking about, where everything is in the drawers are kind of recessed back, so you're not going to be banging your knees on them. Now if you look though, the thing is that we're also not going to be touching the back, and that would normally be an issue, but because this is a build that we're attaching this to the wall, I actually want some room behind this box. And the reason being is that I already know that that wall is probably not going to be too straight, because when I did the ones for my closet, I actually didn't allot a lot of room for scribing like this, and I had a lot of extra work to do at the end. So what this will do is will allow us to build the drawers like this, and then when I go to do the mounting and I mount it to the wall, I'll be able to place these where I want them and then scribe basically a large filler block that'll go behind one of the members that's used to attach it to the wall, and then we'll be attaching it with lag bolts straight through both of them. It'll make for a very strong, Very strong connection, and at the same time it accounts for any motion that you might have. Now, personally, I don't care if this doesn't go all the way to the back, because when I make the sculpted part that's on the front and down the sides will extend beyond this box, and they'll actually be scribed to the wall as well. So it won't matter that there actually is a member inset a little ways from that. And the drawers will be able to go all the way to the back, because there really won't be anything limiting them other than to how far we want to make them. Alright, so this is the part where we fix the screw up. This is the post that I made out of poplar. Should have been made out of mahogany, because you can actually see this end grain, of course, from the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to take the router and I'm going to cut away most of this. I'm not going to get so close that I touch the mahogany here. All I want to do is build a shelf out here where I've cut away. I've got it set to about 3/16. It could be shallow or more deep, doesn't really matter. Just pick a depth. Now I'm using a down spiral bit. It'll be much cleaner in this end grain for doing the clear out. I'm not going to put the dust collection on it because I really want to be able to see where I'm going so I don't damage either of these. Once I have that shelf, we'll finish it off with a chisel and just a very quick slice off the bandsaw. A little bit of glue, nobody will know. Don't tell anybody. I did want to mention one more thing. I'm using the OF 1400, so I put the guide rods in, and then I put one of the pads that you normally use when you're putting it on one of the tracks. This is the same height now as this base, so I can use this as a very, very extended base for keeping this thing flat. So I'm going to be running this handle part, I'm going to keep out here to give myself a huge advantage over top of this router to keep it from being able to even tip at all. So it's a fantastic trick, highly recommend it. So everybody should do that without a dust collector on, just so you can get full appreciation for how much it captures of dust. So what I've got is a very thin amount of this end grain here. But what I have is a nice flat shelf. So what I'm going to do is just use a chisel to finish that. So maybe it was a little bit of luck. I cut this on the table saw instead of the bandsaw, but after marking it, I can push this in, and this is just a perfect match. There's just a little tiny bit of a bump here, so I'll just hit it with the sander afterwards and it'll be perfect. Now it is oversized, but that's what I wanted. So what I'll do is I'll take this flush trim saw after the glue is set and just cut it from the bottom here. All we're trying to do is just hide this end grain that I inadvertently showed by putting a piece of poplar there instead of mahogany. So very simple fix, didn't take all that long. It takes a whole lot less time if you don't screw it up in the first place. Now to finish off this top portion here, I want to add a little bit of extra strength. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a pinner to basically pin these dominoes. They've already been glued up. There's plenty of space here where I can shoot the pins from angles you would never ever see it from. Of course, any pin coming in from the top is going to be covered by granite. Pins coming in from the side, they don't poke all the way through, so you're never going to be able to see those unless you were to actually dismantle the whole thing. It adds a great deal of strength. If you haven't seen my domino video, there's one where it talks about the actual dominoes and how they work when they're pinned, and you can actually take a domino pinned with no glue, and it's very, very strong on its own. So the combination is going to just add for that little bit of extra strength. So we'll go ahead and pin these up. So the top is done, we've got it all nailed together as well, and you know, it's pretty much ready to go once I get the center section. I wanted the center section done on this episode as well. I do have all the stock ripped, and the problem is I received a Laguna joiner planer, which that's not a problem. The problem is I didn't get the mobile base with it. They forgot to mail it. So it's next to my saw, makes cross-cutting very difficult. I'll be doing it, since I ran out a little bit of time today, I'm going to go ahead and do it with the miter saw tomorrow, and we'll be able to get that box put together. It's a very simple box, very easy on the dominoes, nothing new compared to this, so you'll probably just see it in some high-speed action. And then after that, we're going to get the panels glued up that are going to be used for doing the sculpting, and we'll see how much further we can get on it. Thanks.